conservation issues. Has a very positive image of what farmers and landowners are trying to do to take care of their soil. My guest in the program today is Tom Steger, who is the district conservationist with Goodhue County NRCS. Right, Tom?
Yes, that's right, Jerry.
I've worked a lot with Tom Kaufman here in Rice County, so you're like his counterpart over in Goodhue County, right?
Right, I'm Tom's counterpart. I cover Goodhue County and my staff in the Goodhue Conservation District who work over there.
I always enjoy working with different conservation programs. Every once in a while I get an email from you saying this deadline's coming up or this, or can you get the word out, and I always enjoy cooperating with that.
Well, thank you, Jerry. I appreciate your efforts.
Tell us more about yourself, Tom, being as how this is the first time that we met. Your background, how you got interested in working with landowners and conservation practices.
Okay. Well, I'm originally from southwest Wisconsin, Prairie du Chien, and I grew up on a dairy farm there, and I still remember when I was in high school, Dad putting some terraces on the farm, and the old technician that was there, he let me look through the instrument and kind of showing me how it worked and everything. And I kind of forget about that as I went to Wisconsin Platteville for an agronomy degree, and when I was a sophomore, I guess I got a chance for an internship with SCS. And,
sounds like you might have gotten hooked.
And I enjoyed the summer, and it turned into a full-time career.
You obviously enjoy working with farmers and sometimes absentee landowners and trying to do what they can to take care of our most precious resource, which is the soil.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's landowners. With the economics of the system today, we're getting bigger farmers, and you deal a lot of absentee landowners and a lot of female widow landowners too, and that's a whole other challenge to try and help educate them so that they appreciate what they've got and what it needs to be taken care of.
We're making progress, so aren't we? A lot of progress in terms of conserving our soil, be it losing it to water or wind erosion.
Yeah, I think we're better off than we were 30 years ago. We had the Farm Bill, and it kind of required or expected some conservation efforts when you farmed on the steepest ground, at least. And with the equipment, we were talking earlier about how the equipment is trying to make the system work better, and people I think are recognizing it a little bit better too. But it's always economics, and sometimes that can be a challenge for people.
Down where my farms are in south central Minnesota, we're pretty flat. Mm-hmm. But given the heavy rains that we've had the last few years and some of the big winds, we still have issues. And when you get to your home county, Goodhue County, and parts of Rice County, other surrounding counties in our listening area, pretty rolly, it's a even bigger issue.
Oh yeah, you farm on some steep ground. It can be productive. It can be very easy to work with as far as management, but there's that challenge of keeping the soil in place.
Now, tell us more about your daily routine, what you do each day.
Okay, well, we got, we work out of the town of Goodhue. It's kind of the center of Goodhue County, and
you're in the Goodhue County
the service center.
Service center there.
Yeah. It's interesting because we got all new staff over at the Farm Service Agency. They had everybody kind of retired here in the last couple of years, so working with a lot of new people there, with the CRP program and such, and we've got good established staff with the Conservation District. Right now I've got a vacancy. My technician went off to greener pastures last Friday, so we're going to be looking for a new technician there, a federal job, and all that. But typically in a day, we always got the email and all that kind of stuff, and touch base with the other technicians and see what's going on, what we're going to need to deal with during the day.
And because all the technicians are working with individual landowners on different projects, either planning them or like now when the crop's harvested, then you start doing the dirt work, so to speak, right?
Right. Working with a lot of contractors, trying to time out so we can have our pre-construction conference, and then kind of supervise the construction, make sure it gets put in, properly and according to specs, so that if there's cost share involved, we can, authorize the cost share money.
Their jobs have gotten a lot easier with all this technology too, with lasers and everything, hasn't it?
Oh heavens, yes, the lasers. I mean, I got good at using the laser, but now we've got more electronic survey equipment, and I haven't even had the chance to really learn how to use it yet, but my technicians have become very proficient. And one of the handiest things is if we stake something out in the spring and then we lose the flags, we can put them right back.
Yeah, where they were supposed to be with the Goodhue County Soil and Water Conservation District in the Goodhue County office. And Tom, before the break, we were kind of envying the people who really know how to use all of this gadgetry to
oh yes, the electronic survey equipment has really been a boon, because pretty much once we get the project staked out, one person can do the survey and one person can do the field work, the supervision of the construction. So it's handy.
And it really does take another partner. It's the companies, the construction companies that actually build the terraces or shape the grass waterways. They have the equipment to move the dirt to get it done right.
We've got some excellent contractors that work in Goodhue County, and you know, whether it be putting in tile or doing the earthwork to build the basins or a dam, you know, it gets done right.
Well, the reason I wanted to get you on the program is because we have a deadline coming up for the EQIP program, and it seems to me that that's been one of the most popular conservation programs that we've ever had to deal with. And maybe part of the reason it's so popular is because there's so many different areas that you can utilize.
Yeah, you're right, Jerry. EQIP, it stands for Environmental Quality Incentive Program. And a number of years ago, the agency kind of rolled all our cost share and financial assistance programs into this one kind of umbrella. And so there's a lot of different resources that we can address using the EQIP program, whether it be soil erosion or water quality, air quality, manure storage. We can fund a lot of those through the EQIP.
Yep. That was kind of a change and seemed to evolve, because usually you didn't think of manure management and manure storage as part of a conservation program, but it's become a very popular part of the program.
Right. You know, traditionally people look at manure as something to dispose of, but you know, we've gotten all smarter about it. We realize there's fertility value in that manure. You and I were just talking about the manure that you get put on your property, and you know, you get an analysis of that can replace a lot of the other commercial fertilizers that you might otherwise have to purchase.
And we have a lot of critters in your home county of Goodhue.
Yep. Last I looked, Goodhue was still the number 5 dairy county in the state. We've obviously got a lot fewer dairy farms. They're a lot, you know, larger cow numbers, but then you get all those cows concentrated, and then you've got to worry about how to handle that manure. And we've done some projects with people to help them out.
I've been over to Goodhue recently. I was heading east of Goodhue to go see Dwayne Jonas, and there was a big manure structure being built at a large dairy farm there. And you know, boy, they got this down to science. They had the earthen sides, and then they had a liner in the bottom. And
Yep. Typically, that's what we do in our areas. We got to have some kind of a liner, because we're usually shallow to bedrock, and just having a clay liner wouldn't be adequate. So either concrete or a material liner is used.
But I think down our way, I knew some dairy farmers, and I think there they just use clay because we got that heavy clay. So there again, it all depends on the local environment.
Yep, every site is different, and you know, it goes back to the soil surveys that we all have in the county. It helps you to understand what kind of soil you have on your farm and how best to use it and to treat it.
Let's talk a little bit more in detail about the EQIP program, because a lot of the different parts of EQIP, there's some cost share funds available, and sometimes some pretty lucrative cost share funds.
Right. And I just got to say, I'm trying to work at it. We don't use the term cost share anymore. We use the term financial assistance.
Okay. I'm not politically correct.
I know, but I've been at this long enough that I struggle to say it right. But a few years ago, we changed over. Instead of doing a percentage payment, we do a flat rate payment rate. So, say example, if you're putting in a grass waterway, you might get $2.50 a foot for building the waterway, and you know, you can use that to figure out what your cost would be then for your share of the project.
You mentioned a grass waterway, part of the EQIP, because a number of years ago we put in a grass waterway in the home farm where I grew up, and we did continuous CRP there.
Yep. Yeah, the continuous CRP program is another option to help you put in waterways, and where it fits a site, it's a good deal, because not only do you get some money to help with the cost of installing it, but you'll also get a annual rental payment for 10 years for that land that's taken out of production.
Oh, so where that fits is probably more lucrative for the landowner than putting in a waterway under EQIP.
Yeah. And in some cases, like, you know, in Goodhue, we've got a fair number of farmers that still raise hay and small grains, And if you put a CRP waterway through a field where you've got hay, then you'd have to work around that and not harvest it by accident. So
yeah,
some of those situations it doesn't fit.
Yeah, with all the cattle in Goodhue County, maybe well, I want to put a grass waterway in, and why can't I make the hay for my cattle?
Right.
Under continuous CRP, we have the nesting season where we aren't supposed to.
Right. You're not supposed to harvest them. And
yeah. So there again, the landowner really is one that's calling the shots.
Right, right. When I work with a landowner, say they acquire a new piece of property, ideally we'll walk over it together, look at the different concerns that might be there. Is it steep? Is it flat? Is there drainage problems? And try to plan out how they're going to use it and use it properly. And once we get that figured out, then if they got some work they need to do to upgrade the property, then we'll try and find them some financial assistance to do that.
And all the contractors that are good to work with. Many times I'll bet you kind of say you can recommend some contractors for the landowner to work with.
I got to be careful because I got burned once. I recommended a contractor by accident, and it came back at me.
Out too well,
but we do have a list of contractors that are interested in working in the county and doing the projects, and we'll provide that to the landowner, and they can make their decision.
So some of the different. Let's start with just the soil first before we get to the livestock. Grass waterways, terraces, sediment basins. Why don't you explain what each one of those are?
Grass waterway, you can think about like in a valley when the water is flowing in a concentrated area. If you've got a bare tilled field, it's going to tend to tear those soil particles loose and carry them on down. And not only do you lose the soil from your site, then you've got dirty water wherever it is going downstream. So if we put a grass cover in where that water flow is concentrating, we call that a grass waterway, and the water will flow across the top, and maybe it'll filter out some sediment in with that grass. Terraces and water and sediment control basins, a lot of times you'll see those out on some continuous crop fields, and what they'll do is they'll kind of catch the water that's rushing down the hill and detain it for a short time, and then let it slowly out through a pipe. We make sure that we have the drawdown at 24 hours or less so that we don't have crop damage where the water pools temporarily. But we space those out, and it works good with equipment. Usually there's a little grass on the basins themselves, but it's not such an issue as far as spraying or lifting up the planter and such like you have with waterway.
I've seen it on some fairly steep side hills where there's a terrace and then the water's kind of funneled to a sediment basin. So get the water here, slow it down, stop it, the sediment can filter out, but we in a controlled way, take the water off the land. That's basically it.
Yep, exactly. When we get a heavy rain, you've got a big rush of water coming off the fields, but if we can slow that runoff, we're going to save the soil, keep it on the field, and be less problems downstream, flooding wise.
I've worked a little bit with Dakota County too, and they have kind of a different issue there because they have a lot of blacktop and a lot of roads and parking lots, and so it's a little bit different issue there than it is in Goodhue County, a little bit more rural.
Right. Whenever you get into that kind of development kind of country and you get a lot of impervious surfaces, the water absolutely can't soak in, so you've got to deal with those runoffs. And rain gardens is one of the issues you see up a lot in the cities, just a little catch basin as it were, and a lot of times they plant with wildflowers and everything to help slow the flow.
I've even seen different developments, and someone told me once that even the developer then has a requirement that there'll be a basin. They'll take part of the property and then filter all the water into that big basin. It looks like a man-made little pond, and I assume that then that's another way of getting all the water there and then slowly releasing it.
Yep, and in the state of Minnesota, I forget how many years now, but it's pretty much been a requirement when you open up a piece of ground for development and put in a lot of impervious surfaces, you have to work it such that you don't have any more runoff from the site than you had before you developed it.
And that's maybe a good trade-off. I'll bet most of the developers don't complain about taking a little bit of that property, or you're smirking. Do they sometimes complain?
Well, I guess I haven't worked with too many developers on it.
Because you don't have a big issue.
It's a cost of doing business, and it's there. It's some more lots that they can't sell, but in the big picture, it's really important to do.
Well, talk a little bit more about the EQIP and how livestock producers have used the EQIP program.
Okay. With EQIP, we've got a couple different options. There's one where we call it a comprehensive management plan, and where a landowner, maybe they've got a whole, maybe say a dairy operation, and they know they need to do something for managing their manure better. With our staff, cutbacks in federal and everything, we don't have the staff to do everything for everybody. We'd like to, but we can't. So through the EQIP program, we've done, I think, 5 in the last couple of years, where a person will ask for and get a contract to hire an outside consultant to do a plan for their dairy operation, which would include manure storage, manure handling, and application to the fields. And once they have that plan from a consultant, then they can come back to us and say, okay, this is what we want to do. Our engineer review it, say, yeah, that makes sense for the site. Then they can request money to actually install the project.
Oh, so that's kind of a way of spreading your resources a little bit more then.
Right.
Somebody else comes up with a plan, you just kind of say, yes, this looks good.
Yeah, because our engineers, they were spending 40 to 80 hours per site trying to divide those plans. And when you got limited resources, you have to do something. And if we can do a bunch of terraces and basins in the same time that we could do one manure storage system, we're going to be better off.
So that's been a pretty popular part of the EQIP program.
Yeah, we've had, I think, 5 in the last couple of years have taken advantage of that, in Goodhue County.
Is that mostly maybe dairymen, or do sometimes pork producers or turkey growers?
It's available for anybody. The ones we've worked with have all been dairy, though, as it happens.
Yeah. And it's not cost share anymore, it's assistance, right?
Financial assistance, yeah.
But I kind of like that idea that, granted, that's taxpayer money then, but all taxpayers have an interest in clean water and in clean environments, so they're kind of doing a little bit of seed money, so to speak, to help people do the right thing.
We were talking earlier, I've been around the agency for 30-some years now, and over the years people say, why is there cost share money? Why is the government putting money into it? But if you look at the benefits that come, say if you put a dam at the end of a field and you can slow the runoff coming out that field, you can reduce the amount of sediment, all the landowners downstream are going to benefit from that project. And to assess them to pay for it would be problematic. You could never get it all work. But if you've got the federal government through the taxpayer money helping out with these, there's a public benefit, and that's where it comes from.
Well, then when you get the really heavy rains, 5-6 inches, even if you can slow that water down for one day, that means less roads underwater, maybe less bridges washed out downstream. So overall society taxpayers are going to benefit from that.
And you can see that, like we've got the Bell Creek watershed over in the center part of Goodhue County. There was 5 large impoundments and some smaller structures that were put in. I guess the last one was finished in 1986. And prior to that, they had, there was a lot of storm damage, roads washed out. There was, not a good situation. And I know I've heard highway department guys that said, before those were put in, it was terrible. Now it's not bad at all.
It seems like we have had a little bit of a change. I remember growing up and all those years on the farm, we got 5 or 6 inches once. That was just a huge deal. Now it seems like every year, every other year we get, a rain event like that. So it seems like they're more intense, coming faster.
Yeah, you can talk about politically correct. You use the phrase climate change or global warming, whatever one you want to use, but for better or worse, whatever the reason, we are seeing changes. We're seeing more severe storms.
Whether man caused it or it's just naturally, how can you dispute that the rainfall events are more intense these last few years?
Yeah, we're seeing that. And look at the growing season. It's how many times have we had this late of frost? I mean, we're in the spring. I mean, how often are people out there planting in early April? And we're seeing a longer growing season. We're seeing these intense storms, and for better or worse, they're there. We got to deal with them.
Did, for the most part, your structures hold up to some of those heavy rains? I remember after one of the big rain events, I called Tom. I was just curious, and they said they had a few sediment basins that overtopped, but nothing real serious.
We try to design the structures at least so they can handle 4 1/4 inch rain, and sometimes you go bigger than that. And if we have a bigger structure, we're going to be designing for a bigger rainfall event. But the smaller ones, it's a low hazard. If they do top out or wash out, it's not the end of the world. It's not life and limb in danger. But we try to handle that 4 or 5 inch rainfall and occasionally get more. But there's safety built into them. There's emergency spillways and there's freeboards. So we haven't had too much problem with them washing out.
Should mention that this is a lot of technical expertise that it's available at those government service centers in most of these counties.
Yeah, there's a NRCS presence in every county in Minnesota, and you know, conservation planning, the technical assistance to help a person figure out how to best manage their soil and water resources. I mean, that's the part I love about the job.
I guess I never quite understood. You're a federal employee with the NRCS, but then we have our local soil and water conservation districts. You're all working on conservation practices together, but is that more like a state versus?
Yeah, I just give a bit of history back in the Dust Bowl days when the Soil Conservation Service started. You know, you had federal people that were trying to show the local people how to do things better. And, you know, people are no different then than they are now, that they don't always want to listen to the federal person talk. So President Roosevelt enacted a legislation that's allowed for the creation of local conservation districts. So each state ended up making a charter, and conservation districts formed locally. It was locally elected people that set priorities, and they invited federal people like myself to come in and help out and help get things to work. So the conservation districts, you know, are locally focused. They're a subdivision of state government technically, but they're locally focused, usually county based, and over the years they've acquired their own technical expertise and staff too. So not only are federal people coming in helping the district implement their priorities, they've also got local staff, district staff that does that too.
And so you work very closely with the local soil and
Yeah,
water.
we work pretty much most cases, you know, share offices and share information, equipment, and everything, because we're all trying to get the job done.
And you alluded to it earlier too. You work fairly closely with the FSA officers too, because a lot of times things have to go back and forth.
Right. The CRP program is a perfect example. They handle the contracts, they take the applications, but we do the technical work on those, help figure out, you know, how big of a waterway is needed or how wide of a buffer is needed, and develop what kind of seeding needs to be done to make it work.
So it's kind of nice that you're all kind of in the same complex in most counties. You got FSA, NRCS, SWCD all at the same place.
When I started working in Goodhue County in '89, we were in Zumbrota, and Farm Service Agency, or ASCS at that time, was in Red Wing. And there was a lot of driving back and forth. And as things have evolved, I don't know how we could do that now. We almost have to be co-located.
You mentioned in your email that kind of got this program going. We have a deadline for this round of EQIP funding coming up for the financial assistance.
Yes,
I'm catching on.
Yeah, I don't want to forget. Don't overlook that. November 20th is the date when we need to have any applications in for anyone that's looking for assistance on projects for 2016. I don't know the whole background, but they've kind of evolved the program to where they want to try and have one sign up, give us time to work through the planning and the design and cost estimates. So then probably come March we'll be able to sign cost share contracts for those that make the cut. And then we've got, you know, the summer and fall to install those practices.
And that's how it's kind of rated too, isn't it? Where obviously we have a limited amount of financial assistance funds, but then it's kind of up to you or with the SWCD to prioritize which projects.
Right, Jerry. What we do is any EQIP application that comes in, you know, we look at the site, evaluate what's needed, kind of figure out what it's going to cost. We also have a kind of a scoring sheet we do, and you know, how many benefits are going to come from installing, say, this grass waterway. You know, are there going to be, are we right next to a creek, so we're going to be keeping sediment out of a creek, or are we a long ways from a creek so that, you know, it's not quite as beneficial? You know, is there endangered species wildlife around the area too? So we try to take into consideration all the different benefits that might come from installing the practice, and the ones that rank highest get funded first.
And if someone wanted that financial assistance, but maybe they didn't rank high enough, well, then we can always go the next time. Maybe that quote competition will be less, and you might get your financial assistance the next time around.
Right. There is, you know, different things will happen. You know, maybe Missouri doesn't use all their money, so they'll reshuffle the money and give Minnesota a little bit more. So we've got another chance to go further down the list and approve some applications. The state of Minnesota also has some financial assistance money. Theirs actually is cost share percentage-wise. and local conservation district offices might be able to help out for some of those that don't make the cut for equip.
We change gears for just a minute. I have to ask you about buffers.
Okay.
Governor Dayton's buffer initiative. I don't know, the law was, tons of pages, and I'm not sure anybody completely understands what's in it, how we're going to do it, how we're going to implement this. Where are we with that whole issue, Tom?
Well, I guess I know enough to be dangerous about it, but it's, we've had, the DNR has had a shoreline ordinance for many years in Minnesota, and it's been expected that people had a buffer along what they consider state protected waters and wetlands. What the governor's proposal is doing now is kind of expanding the area that should be covered by buffers or protected by buffers. The guidelines are a little bit different, and what we're waiting for is, I guess by next summer, we're supposed to have a map that shows exactly which waters are supposed to be protected. So we've got a couple years to get this implementation done.
So in other words, you'll find out which drainage ditches or rivers or creeks should have buffers along Jerry's property, and which ones don't need buffers?
Right. I'm sure that we're going to still have the same state protected waters. The main, the Zumbro River should have a buffer along it. Prairie Creek should have a buffer along it.
Or even, this applies to lakes too, right?
Right. It applies to lakes, and like you mentioned earlier, drainage ditches, those are going to be included now where they weren't before. And which exact drainage ditches, I guess I don't know.
Because I did hear there was a little bit of controversy going on. Some counties apparently were really jumping on board and kind of going out with a heavy hand, and others were just kind of trying to work with landowners and see how this shakes out.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the thing we have to do is just, kind of keep working with it, because we don't have a definitive rule or map or anything yet as far as what the new buffer initiative is going to require.
But if you wanted to get going with it, certainly you could stop in and start talking to staff about what you
we can help you figure out what you might need, and there's even the opportunity to do the CRP program. If you had a cropping history on the field, you might be able to get a payment for that area that you're going to put in grass.
Well, we only have about 30 seconds left, but if you have an interest, Tom, talk to your county NRCS office. We've got one in every county.
You bet.
And what was the deadline then for the financial assistance for the equip?
For equip, November 20th is when we need to have the applications in. So if you've got a project or something you've been thinking about, stop in the office. Let's get her going.
Thanks for stopping by, Tom, and keep those emails coming when there's deadlines and things coming up that landowners should know about.
Glad to do it, Jerry. Thank you.
That was Tom Steger, who's the District Conservationist with the Goodhue County NRCS.